Hey guys, I'm John with SteadyBuilt Productions, and today I want to show you guys how to balance and set up a gimbal. I get a lot of questions on how to do it, so let's jump right in. All right, so we've got everything unboxed here. Got our camera set up, our base plate, gimbal with all three of our axes locked out. And then we've got our focus and our zoom controls over here, little tool. All right, so with our motors attached, I'm going to grab our plugs and plug them into our motors. And now we are ready to start mounting and balancing the camera onto the gimbal. So the first thing I'll do is actually slide this base plate. If your gimbal has an adjustment left and right, I recommend to start, you bring it out to the left to make sure that there's no interference with this set screw or with your tilt motor. Okay, so we'll slide it in, typically from front to back. You'll hear the safety latch. That means that you fully engaged the base plate. Remember, all three of my axes are locked up right now. So before we actually get to balancing, we want to make sure that everything on the camera is set in its final resting location. We don't want to make any adjustments because, like I said, balancing a gimbal is all about balance, and balance comes down to weight. So if things are moving and you balance your gimbal and then like, oh man, I didn't take my lens cap off, or oh man, I need to add a microphone up here. Now you have to rebalance your gimbal after you add that. If you change lenses, you have to rebalance your gimbal. If you change any sort of weight distribution on this thing, other than zooming in and zooming out, you have to rebalance the gimbal or you'll blow your motors out, potentially blow your motors out. And now, before we start doing our adjustments, we want to, again, slide our base plate. If yours has a left and a right slide, it's a good idea to pay attention to this with your motor, your set screw, and your working angle. It's typically a good idea to try and keep your camera as close as you can to this without interfering with anything. You don't want to just jack it all the way out to the end of this rail, because that puts more stress on your roll axis. And so to reduce stress on this, you want to just put it as tight as you can here while still having full functionality. So that looks pretty good there. So now we're actually going to start balancing. The first thing that we're going to do is unlock this tilt axis, and we're going to start with our base plate latch over here, and we're just going to slide it back and forth, making very tiny adjustments until we get about close. And you don't have to make this very first step perfect, but if it's tilting forward, slide it back. If it's tilting back, slide it forward. And these are literally like minute changes. Once you get somewhere close to balanced, go ahead and lock that down. The tilt axis has two adjustment points, your base plate, and then this rail here, which is how high the carriage sits. So with this one, as it tilts back, I want to push it forward. As it rolls forward, I want to tilt it back. And again, like I'm saying, very tiny adjustments. And then once you find the spot, lock it down nice and tight, and then bring it back up. And if it does that, which is fine, you just make a slight adjustment over here by pushing this the opposite way. So we should be pretty close there. The way to test if your tilt axis is properly balanced is you should be able to point your camera up at a 45, and you should be able to point your camera down at a 45 and it not fall one way or the other. So this axis is properly balanced. It doesn't have to be perfectly exact, but it should be basically whichever angle you tilt it to, it should just about stay there. So that axis is good. We're gonna move on to the next axis, which is our roll axis, which gives our camera the ability to do this. So we're just gonna, if you can see here, we're just gonna hit this unlock button. Now our camera's open. To make things easier, you can always isolate the axes. That's what these locks are for. So now my camera's not gonna tilt and it's not gonna pan. It's only gonna roll. So what I'm gonna do here, this one's pretty simple and pretty easy. I'm gonna loosen up my set screw, and then I'm just gonna slide it until it balances. So As the weight falls to the left, I'm just gonna slide it on the rail to the right until I find that point. Okay, and so I'm gonna bring it back just a tiny little bit. So there we go, we're pretty close to the center there. So make sure you set these screws nice and tight, but don't kill it. So one thing I like to do with the roll axis is just give it one way, give it the other way, and see if it comes back to about center. This axis looks good now. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna lock this axis back down again, and we're gonna unlock our pan axis. So I'll unlatch that, and now our camera can fully spin. Again, both of our other axes are locked out, so we're not affecting any of those. This is probably one of the most important axes to balance. If you don't do this properly, you're gonna get a lot of shake or a lot of vibration in your camera, and it's gonna put a lot of strain on this motor. So you wanna make sure you take your time to balance this one properly. There's a lot of different things out there on the internet that show you different ways to balance this one, and I've tried all of them and probably then some. And what I found that works absolutely the best is if you take the camera and hold it so that the base of the gimbal is horizontal, and then you just see where it balances. And so if you look this way, again, we'll go back to body weight versus lens weight, right? So we're body heavy here. So what we're gonna do, stand it back up, and we're gonna slide forward to give it some more lens weight, and we're gonna latch it back down, and then we're gonna stand it up. Now we're lens heavy, so we're just gonna come back nice and easy, and we're gonna work it over somewhere about in the middle, and then there it is. Okay, we're nice and balanced. So now we can unlock our other axes, and our camera should be about balanced. So this gimbal is now ready to be powered on. All the axes are perfectly balanced and ready to go. So to power this thing up, we push the power button, which is right here next to the focus wheel. Okay, we've got power coming on. There it goes. Now what you want to do is any adjustments that need to be made on this camera, your touch screen, your knobs, your everything, you need to be conscious that this gimbal here is doing its best to keep everything balanced and right here. So you do not want to push on this camera to turn it. You don't want to push on it to tilt it up or down. You don't want to like jar it and grab it. You want to make sure when you're touching this, you're putting the least amount of stress possible while still like pushing your button. But a balanced gimbal should be able to basically keep its location. And so we're in pan follow mode right here. ZHIYUN has this nice little control handle here. You can see pan follow. They also have a few other modes. Follow, so as I tilt down, the camera tilts down. As I tilt up, the camera tilts up. As I rotate, it rotates. That's a nice one if you want nice fluid motion going with a pan and a tilt. And if you want to control the roll of this thing, you have a little joystick down here that will let you control the roll. And that, folks, is how you balance a 3-axis gimbal. I hope you found this video helpful and informative. If you didn't, I'm sorry. If you did, please smash that subscribe button, hit the like button, click the bell for notifications, and stay tuned for more videos just like this. Thanks.